What's going on, guys? Satsuki the Savage here, and today I'm going to be talking unOrdinary episodes 19 through 28. The last thing I pointed out with my last video is that with unOrdinary, it didn't really have a plot, but with these batch of chapters, that was finally addressed. It's still not the full picture, but nonetheless, I'm starting to see something. But enough of that, we're going to get right into the video, so let's start. For this video, I will have 5 main topics, in addition to the miscellaneous section where I cover points that I couldn't fit under one umbrella. Now, with that being said, let the games begin. First, and I'm sorry I had to do this, but I had to make an entire segment dedicated to me ranting about Sera's carelessness. Sera, who knew the unOrdinary book was banned, was warned by John to take caution with the book, is one of the most intelligent characters in the series, managed to utterly fumble and fuck up everything. Sera not only left the unOrdinary book unattended, but left it in plain sight, and it's hard for me to accept that someone of Sera's caliber would make such a damning mistake, even acknowledging her nonchalant attitude. The consequence of the book being found only resulted in Sera's departure for a month, but the situation had the potential to be so much worse. But I digress. So now that I've expressed my gripes with Sera, how about I go into my second main topic, which is Sera's past, present, and future. Sera in the past had a reputation of being perfect. With perfect grades and the strongest power, others viewed Sera as an anomaly, a peak impossible to reach. For Sera, the threshold for greatness became higher and higher. Eventually, being the best wasn't awe-inspiring, it was business as usual. What was overlooked, though, is that a reputation has to be built, not given. Sera had to work to be the best. She felt pressure from the masses to maintain her image, and that resulted in her true self being suppressed. Then came John, who broke the status quo, a cripple amongst the mighty who didn't seem to give credence to the hierarchy. The catalyst for growth came when John humiliated Sera by accidentally dropping the cake when she demanded he hand it over. The great Sera was humbled for a change, earning her jeers and doubts from her peers, and her still being sensitive to her image, snapped and lashed out at John. In doing this though, Sera came to resent having to maintain this perfect idol facade, so she finally became free of the shackles in her mind, and there ends the tale of Sera's past. The Sera of the present has a different tone. One that says, I'm raw, y'all can't fuck with me, so I ain't worried about y'all. The outside chatter while being heard isn't being listened to by Sera any longer. I already had Sera as my favorite character with just 13 episodes, but these last episodes enhanced my stance on the matter. I absolutely adore Sera. She's raw, she's smart, I think she's a good friend, and she actually had to overcome an internal obstacle. Sera may have had this perfect portrayal, but she isn't a Mary Sue in any way, shape, or form. Her ideology has been brought to question, and her past made her seem a lot more vulnerable than her usual face would show. I love the fact that Sera still has room to grow, and I'm excited to see how she can evolve from her present self. The Sera of the future will be a product of John's influence as well as the unOrdinary book. The seeds have already been planted, it's just a wait to watch them bloom. Next up, I'm going to talk about Remy and Ember. Back in episode 6, we saw Ember's first on-panel victim, Ecstatic, who also happens to be Remy's brother. There was a clue as to the importance of Ecstatic, which was his name. It connects him to Remy, who has electric powers. Initially, I thought the news reports of Ember served only to make the readers aware of their presence, but now there is a legit subplot with Remy and Ember. Remy is feeling sorrow, and that can easily turn into rage directed towards revenge. Her brother was killed and branded, further disrespected by her peers, making a betting pool on who's going to be the next vigilante to die, with Ecstatic being on the dead section. Ember's attacks have been inching closer to the characters we follow, so we can expect Remy to confront her brother's killer soon. Now, going more in depth with Ember's side of the equation, we may have more info on them than I thought. Episode 8, there was a guy at the mall that read the power levels of people, giving out teddy bears to those with a score of 5 or better, which represents top tiers. At first, I thought nothing of it, but everything changed once a tracker was found in Sera's bear. Going before we found that out, in episode 12, we saw two shadowy figures marking down the location of somebody, but now we know that somebody was most likely Sera, who was sleeping at John's house at the time. Furthermore, one of the shadows had an orange dialogue bubble, the same as the mall guy, and Uru-chan is consistent with matching the same dialogue bubbles to the character's hair color. So if Ember is related to these events, they are probably tracking strong people down to either recruit them or kill them. And with Remy's investment and John's house being marked by this mysterious group, there are now threads that connect our characters with Ember. The question I raise with Ember is, will they face ramifications from authority? As it stands now, Ember is being backed up by societal norms, and I say it every video, but the strong govern the weak, so them killing people weaker than them is something that this world actually supports in some way. Moving on to the king, the asshole himself, Arlo. Arlo has been setting events into motion, and although his true objective isn't crystal clear yet, one can take a guess. Let's quickly review what we know about Arlo so far. He's a high tier but not the strongest in Wellston. He has beef with Sera, he's interested in John, and he's an asshole. Taking Arlo's personality into account, his goal for snitching on Sera could be to finally rule Wellston with an iron fist unopposed. Sera is top dog in Wellston. She knows it, Arlo knows it, and so does everyone else. So it wouldn't be surprising now Arlo had Elaine tattle on Sera just to have more control as the next strongest. With Sera out of the picture, Arlo would officially be the king in title and power. Or would he? Enter John, the self-proclaimed cripple that showed no fear when bumping into the king of Wellston. It's an occurrence that cannot be ignored by Arlo, because therein lies the chance that there could be someone who can rival or even best him. Having a commodity like John remain a mystery is a case Arlo won't allow, so his plan seems to be to isolate John in the hopes of answering a three-part question. The question is, how in the hell is a cripple like John thriving in Wellston? Is it his friendship with Sera? Is it pure luck? Or does he have hidden powers? The solution to the first part was to eliminate Sera from the equation altogether. The second part can be answered by continuously testing John, since he would no longer have a lifeline to retreat to. And the third part is answered by process of elimination. John must have powers if he can hold his own against an onslaught of Arlo's test without support. I believe Arlo is going to expose what's really up with John by removing his layers of protection, and if that's the case, John is going to be hella uncomfortable in these upcoming episodes. And this is all speculation on my part based on what I know from Arlo. I could be dead ass wrong. I just feel like Arlo is doing all of this because John piqued his interest and he's meticulous. Arlo's throne could be in danger of having another asshole sit on it, and he won't stand for that. Still branching off Arlo, I need to briefly talk about Elaine. Elaine in these stretch of episodes was actually cute. She was being a caring roommate and a good hostess, and it almost made me like her. But then you remember the flashbacks. Now, people can be redeemed, but in the case of Elaine, her attitude towards others is dependent on their strength. Elaine treats Arlo, Sera, and Remy with respect, but John doesn't get the same courtesy for obvious reasons. If you're strong, Elaine will be an angel. If you're weak, Elaine will be a demon. And if your decency is discriminate, then you probably aren't a decent person at all. Now, people may point to Elaine snitching as a sign of her bad personality, to which I must disagree. Last video, I said that Elaine would snitch because of her friction with Sera and hate for John, but I was wrong. Elaine ratted out Sera for two reasons. One, because of the fear of Sera becoming a vigilante, and two, because it was Arlo's order. Elaine wasn't telling simply out of malice, but since she did ultimately tell, it solidifies her as Arlo's pawn. Elaine didn't take action until Arlo gave the word, and if she was bold enough to snitch on Sera, who is her roommate, someone she cares about, someone she idolizes, and the strongest person in school,
then Arlo has successfully made her into a minion. Finally, wheeling over to the alleged cripple, we have John. The cat's pretty much out of the bag now. John has powers he's been hiding, and we have clues piling up by the panel. The glowing eyes, the dismissal of the hierarchy, the confidence in battle. These are the telltales that point to John capping about being a cripple. John blatantly contradicted himself in his questioning by Eason. When John was asked by Eason, what does he do to survive the lifestyle of Wellston, John replies that he usually walks to the edge of the hallways and stays quiet to avoid trouble. But we've seen on 2 occasions that John doesn't bother doing any of that. John bumped into Arlo twice, not paying attention to his surroundings like most scared cripples would probably do, and the first time he ran into Arlo, right after, he started singing to himself. John's photo from Bolston High School was also uncovered by Eason, proving that John lied about being homeschooled before transferring to Wellston. The only reason to believe that John is a cripple is because he said so, which he's been proven to be an unreliable source of information, and because we actually haven't seen him use an ability as far as we know. So if John is really hiding an ability, the question is, why? From the fragments of the flashback we got from John, we can gather that he probably got bullied in school, only being helped by green-haired girl. The real clue was when John beat the shit out of Krolik, but stopped after remembering the face of a roughed up kid, probably from his past. John is most likely very strong, but has been trying to keep his powers dormant in the attempt to not hurt anyone like he may have done so in the past. This will make sense as to why John hates the strong taking advantage of the weak. He doesn't want to become this monster he hates, so he keeps his powers hidden to avoid this. The irony, though, is the unOrdinary book written by John's father. The almighty protagonist in unOrdinary protects the cripples and stands with them on equal footing. But as Sera pointed out, the common denominator in the book and in the real world is that power is needed to provoke change. I believe that John parallels to the protagonist in unOrdinary, and if that's true, John cannot get by remaining a pacifist. He's going to have to flex his powers sooner rather than later, and I'm sure Arlo will make sure that happens. The last observation I want to make with John is his speech bubbles. It wasn't something I noticed until I reread unOrdinary again, but Uru-chan uses black speech bubbles to show a shift in John's emotions. Normally, John's speech bubble is white, but pretty much every time he's enraged, the speech bubble turns black. This also lends into my belief that John may have some anger issues. John is usually on his pacifist grind, but when he snaps, he goes crazy. We've only seen glimpses of John going into a fit of rage, but I feel like this is going to resurface once John keeps getting tested.
All right, so for the miscellaneous section, 3 things I want to talk about is, first, powers might be hereditary in this universe because you have someone like Ecstatic and Remy, and of course we didn't really know shit about Ecstatic other than his name, but given his name, I'm guessing that he also uses electricity, and since that's Remy's brother, then yeah, powers might be hereditary in unOrdinary. And bringing up the invisible person again, when I reread those chapters, one thing I failed to mention, or I just forgot, was that John threw his shirt on him/her. So that's one way you can bring the invisible person right back, because they would have to return John's shirt. And also, John's dad is still alive, which surprised me, because given the fact that he's the author of the unOrdinary book, which the authorities hate, so much so that they sent Sera away for a month just for reading it, it's kind of surprising he's still alive. I thought they would try to kill him or something like that. But it seemed from the episode that he was in, he seemed okay to me. He seemed fine. It didn't sound like he was coughing up blood or he was calling for prison or anything. That's crazy to me. That's kind of weird. I wonder if John's dad is going to be shown in the series, because he's low-key an important figure. Being the author of the unOrdinary book, he has bred a lot of vigilantes, so he has influenced a lot of the characters in the series. And to cap off this video, I want to reiterate that John will get tested in these next batch of chapters. And when I say tested, I mean getting his ass bust by Arlo and his goons, all right? Because Arlo believes that John has powers, so he's going to throw everything in his arsenal to see if that's true or not. So I believe that John is going to get beat the fuck up in these next chapters, like really bad, because Arlo is a cruel nigga. That's a real asshole for you. But guys, that's pretty much it for the video. If you enjoyed this video, like, comment, subscribe. Satsuki the Savage, out.
Am I dying to live or am I living to die? Living a lie with my head stressed out. See, I'm stressed out.